Hi everyone, today we are going to make some connections between our two stories' primary sources and the Oregon Trail. We are going to use text evidence from both of these readings to compare and make a connection between both of these texts. So today we are going to be making a text-to-text connection. And if you want, you can go ahead and get out your booklet to refer back to our stories. We have primary sources and our text about the Oregon Trail. So we're going to compare really and contrast these two stories to see if we can make a connection. Here's our story, Oregon Trail. So what are some text evidences from our story primary sources? I know that a primary source is something that someone has direct knowledge of a topic on. So someone who lived through an event is a primary source. Remember, we learned that pictures can be primary sources, letters, different artifacts from the past. We talked about our paintings being a primary source from long ago. So a primary source is someone who has direct knowledge of a topic or someone who has lived through something. So I'm going to add that here. If you've lived through an event, then you would be a primary source. What I know about our story, the Oregon Trail, is that Edith was writing journal entries. Okay, so what I wrote in this box was that Edith writes journal entries about her days traveling the Oregon Trail. I'm going to also go back into our primary sources and look for one more piece of evidence to use. Let's see. I remember that they had said that the written word is the oldest primary source. That was from long ago, before they took photographs and did all sorts of other research, used computers and had reporters, that when people wrote down things, that was the oldest primary source, like diaries, newspapers, other documents. Those things, or artifacts, as they mentioned, are a good way to learn about the past. Here was our first key detail. Primary source is someone who has direct knowledge of the topic, or someone who has lived through an event is a primary source. So what I'm going to add here is that the written word is a primary source, and we know that it is one of the oldest primary sources. In the past, people wrote handwritten letters to one another. Now it's a little different because we are able to use emails, and we have newspapers, and we have other technologies that help us send information to one another. But in the past, diaries were a certain way that people were able to tell what was happening in the world at that time. So from this story, we learned that the written word is one of the oldest primary sources. Now, what do we know about the Oregon Trail? Well, we know that Edith was writing in her diary, and she was giving details about the weather, about the trip, where they stopped. So you can go ahead and add a few more details about what she was writing in her writing about the Oregon Trail. But the connection that I have made from these two stories is that Edith's diary is a primary source of information. Her writings taught us. Oops, our lights went out. Hang on 1 second. There we go. Her writings taught us what it was like in the past. On the Oregon Trail. Way back before there were people who could take pictures with a camera, or people who could send emails about what was happening, this was our primary source, was her journal. So it was important that people wrote down information about history and the past for us to learn. Great job, boys and girls.